frontline workers, they're the people often that absolutely take the brunt of all the difficulties that many of us are dealing with in life, and often that brunt can be exceptionally challenging, and there's nowhere probably more that does that than the NHS. And there's a new very hard-hitting campaign. It's just been launched to try and highlight what it's like for NHS workers, for those frontline workers. It's shedding light on the alarming reality that in many cases NHS staff are facing more significant mental health challenges even than the patients they care for. Now, this is the brainchild of Frontline 19, an organisation that supports frontline workers. Let's just have a bit of a listen to a bit of this new video.
Looks like she works at the hospital.
There we go. That's just a little taste of this new video. Claire Goodwin-Fee is from Frontline 19. She's the psychotherapist and founder and chief executive, in fact, of Frontline 19. And she joins us now on the phone. Claire, thank you so much for making the time to talk to us here at BCB. This is a really hard-hitting advert, isn't it?
It is. It kind of shows a really harsh reality of what it's like to be a frontline worker. I mean, I started Frontline 19 at the start of the pandemic as a very small project to try and support people, like a lot of people did at the start of the pandemic, because my dad had been in hospital and his life been saved by the NHS. And so when lockdown came around, I was thinking, they're going to need some support because they're going to be hit hardest. What I didn't appreciate at the time is actually the mental health of frontline workers has been an issue for a long time, and it's become even worse since the pandemic, but actually is much bigger than that period of time. There's been a recent, I think it was today or yesterday, a report that's been released that was sorted out by the NHS charity Together, and they now say that it's as many as 3 in 4 NHS workers have got poor mental health and have struggled in the last 12 months. 52% of those people have had issues with anxiety, 51% with low mood, and 42% with exhaustion. Now, on top of that, we also know that 1 in 4 mental health issues have caused NHS workers to think about taking their own life, and that is a really high number.
I mean, that is unbelievable. That number is just unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite shocking. It's one of the biggest learning curves I've been on. I anticipated a very short-term project to support frontline workers during, a very abnormal time, and we went from I wanted to help around 40 or 50 people, to in the first day alone we had 750 people that came through and said, we need support now. Wow. And since then that's now grown to around about 9,000 people a week, and it just keeps growing, and there's such a huge need there. And when you look at the stats supporting this, that's just the things we know about. There are many people that don't want to talk about how difficult, whether you're an NHS worker or a GP, wherever you are in frontline sector, it's very, very hard hitting because I've said to people before, as you go to cross the road, you might see the blue lights, come whizzing past. That's one call in maybe 8 during the day, and they could go from somebody who's got a problem with their child to a death to somebody taking their own life. It could be a number of different things. And at the end of that shift, the worker packs up their stuff, gets in their car and drives home and has to kind of take that stuff with them. And so what we say is it's not just about, looking at what's happening right now. It's also looking about prevention, about talking to students, midwives, doctors, nurses, paramedics, so that they know what they're walking into and they can manage it in an effective way that makes them resilient, and that they can enjoy the work that they do without, this terrible burden of the trauma and experiences that they have.
I know if I say this is probably going to sound really naive to you, okay? But I think probably people listening, quite a lot of people will be feeling like I'm feeling listening to this, which is people going to, if you're a police officer or you're in the army, you're going to be facing those really challenging situations, and that's not to downplay at all the impact on police officers or people in the forces of dealing. But that's part of the job. You've got health workers who go in that because they want to make people better. And then there's violence in the video. There's showing. Yeah. So many people must just think this isn't what I signed up for.
Yeah, and it's not naive at all, because I think unless you're in this community and you understand it, it's one of the best things and one of the kind of maybe worst things about NHS and frontline workers is that they are so good at plugging the gaps, and they don't talk about how difficult it is. When you think, I think the stats of paramedics, 57% of paramedics in the last 12 months have been physically or verbally attacked, and part of that is also sexual assault. I mean, that's another big part of the job, and that shouldn't be part of anybody's job. And I think that's the difficulty, and I think it's very easy to focus on, when you need support from, say, a GP and you can't get an appointment. Of course, that's incredibly frustrating and really worrying. But when you look at how many vacancies there are within the GP surgeries because they can't get the staff, because nobody wants to work under these conditions. I'm really lucky. My GP is amazing, but I've had phone calls from my GP at 9:30 at night, following up with test results or other bits and pieces, and they are at breaking point. There is no support there for them. So that's why we're becoming, very vocal about saying, look, what happens when the workforce is sicker than the people they look after? Yeah. When they're suffering burnout, trauma, moral injury, psychologically it is wrecking people's lives, and people, sadly, once a week, at least one nurse is taking their own life.
I mean, it
can't continue.
No, it can't continue. I mean, this is obviously a responsibility of, every employer has responsibilities for the health and safety of people that they employ. NHS, it used to be, didn't it, that it was the third largest employer in the world or something. So, the leadership at the top of the NHS. Yeah. But is this also a political question that politicians need to think about this too? Are you making any calls in that respect?
So it's really difficult because we had big conversations. I had a meeting with Boris Johnson when he was Prime Minister, the same with Matt Hancock when he was in office. They were very aware of the situation. And again, we've had meetings with NHS England. Again, they're very aware of the situation. I think the difficulty is that I don't know why there isn't any resolution to it, because the services that are out there can effectively help people and support. I mean, when you look at the amount of money that's spent on sick leave within the NHS alone, it's a huge amount of money, far more than it would actually cost to run an effective service. My version of success for Frontline 19 would be that the government get, sorted out with an amazing service for all the workers and go, Claire, you know what? Frontline 19 is not needed anymore. And I go, fantastic, let's shut up shop, you guys take over, look after the staff. Yeah. That to me would be a great result. Do I think that's likely to happen? Probably not.
I mean, it will be happening in pockets, won't it? Because I was listening to a podcast or a documentary about, it was a maternity unit, and I can't remember where it was, but they were talking about how they have sorted out their recruitment crisis and their retention crisis, and all the things they did weren't about recruitment and retention. They were actually about day-to-day working practices. So, it is. So it was about things like support. It was about spaces for people to talk. It was about for them, because a lot of the people who were working there were women. It was about childcare and flexibility and all those kind of things. And they'd actually managed to really make big changes by just looking at their general employment practices and not looking at it in a typical NHS way, which is we have shifts that need to be covered and that cannot budge, but really thinking much more about the staff as humans, frankly.
Yeah, I think there are very small sections, and there are other organisations out there like us that at the weekend there was a big thing that blew up in the papers about NHS Practitioner Health, which is a great service, and they help a lot of people with mental health support in the NHS. But again, that was, the funding was withdrawn with a couple of days' notice, and then everybody on social media went, I did interviews saying this is appalling. You can't just pull this stuff away from people. That support is desperate.
That's needed. Right, and people are experiencing it and probably relying on it just to get to work every day.
Absolutely, and all of a sudden, within a very short period of time, it was overturned. They've done a U-turn and they've given them another year's funding. But all I'll say to you is that if the service was there, we wouldn't be seeing 9,000 people a week.
Yeah.
And I have no problem whatsoever. As I say, my success would be ultimately to say, actually, we're not needed anymore.
Yeah, you're not needed, yeah.
Yeah, because I set this up as a very short-term 3-month project 4 years ago.
Yeah.
With the help of, hoping to help 50 people tops. And as I say, we're at 9,000. That is increasing daily. I love the work that I do. I'm passionate about all mental health. But what is utterly shocking is how people are suffering within the NHS and front lines. And it doesn't need to be like that.
No, thank goodness you're doing the work. Where can people watch the video?
It's on our website, which is 19.com. You can see it on there. It's at the top of our page. It's all across our social media, so people can go on there and watch it. It is hard-hitting.
It is hard-hitting.
But I worked incredibly hard because all of the stories that are on there are true stories that I know about through direct experience with workers. And I worked very hard with the people that actually did the advert for us free of charge. They did it pro bono, to make sure that the voices of the frontline workers are heard, because they aren't heard very often. And
the video does that fantastically. In a very short space of time, it pulls you into the reality. I mean, my mother's just come out of hospital. One of the things that always amazes me when you go into hospitals is that hospitals are not, and I know this is not just about hospitals, but they're not glamorous places, are they? And I think the video really gets that atmosphere of actually of how challenging it is to work in a health setting.
It is. I mean, my own father is in and out of hospital quite a lot. He's an elderly chap who's got a lot of things going on, complex stuff. And I went to an appointment with him up at a big hospital in London, and unbeknownst to the consultant, I was walking down the corridor and the consultant for my dad was actually in front of me, and I saw him bend over and start to cry.
Yeah.
He was so stressed out. Now, that's not uncommon, but the thing is they're very good, the staff are very good at hiding this, and the same with, we work with police, we work with the NHS. The bulk of the people that we work with are healthcare workers, healthcare assistants, paramedics, ambulance techs, you name it. It's incredibly stressful because I think, one, people don't know how bad or how traumatic the job can be. The support isn't always there. I think the teams and stuff around people tend to be the best. Kind of, if you've got a good team around you, that will kind of really help with resilience. But long term, there are, it's things like, I spoke to an oncologist researcher about 3 years ago, maybe longer, and we were talking about how you tell somebody that they're going to die, or how you tell someone's family. Yeah. And I said, surely that must be covered in your training. And they laughed and went, we don't have that training.
No, it's crazy, isn't it? It's absolutely. I know people who are actors who have gone in and done some of that, and they get half a day or something.
Yeah, so what we do is
practice that.
Yeah, so what we do is we do workshops for workers to help them with that. We work with the police. We help the police to understand that how to give the information psychologically, what the responses can be, and how you manage that, and how you kind of can come away from that so that the impact on you is lessened. I mean, none of this stuff is easy, but there are so many things that can be done in order to support people with the work that they do, and it's frustrating that that's not being done, because it's it can, as you say, retention, people always look at the finances and the wages, and yes, that is part of the story, but that's not the biggest part, because people that work in the NHS don't do it for the money. They've never done it for the money. It's about the care. It's about being passionate about what they do. When you look at, they polled the UK residents or people of the UK recently, and 78% of people spoken to said, we are, the NHS is a beloved institution. Well, you know what? If the politicians aren't looking after it, then people power needs to kind of come to the forefront and say, actually, hang on a minute, you need to be looking after this in a much better way.
Absolutely need to keep the pressure on. Everybody went out and clapped for the NHS, didn't they, for lockdown? This is another way to support NHS staff, is by keeping the pressure on this. It's called Sicker Than the Patients. You can find it on your website, on your social media. It's Frontline 19. Claire Goodwin-Fee, thank you so much for joining us, making the time to talk to us here in Bradford. We really appreciate it, and good luck with the campaign. Thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye-bye now.
There we go, Claire Goodwin-Fee there from Frontline 19. That's pretty shocking. As I say, this video has quite upset me, to be honest, as I've been watching it this afternoon. Definitely go and have a look at it. It's called Sicker Than the Patients. You can find it on Frontline 19's social media or on their website.